Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I am here today to do an on my shelf video. I haven't done one of these in quite a long time, and so I went on Instagram and had you guys pick a number between 1 and 13, which is technically the number of shelves I have. The one out in the living room I counted as one shelf because it's a collection of shelves, but there's only a few books on each of those, so it's new and it counts as one. And then I picked the shelf with the most books on it and counted to see how many there were on that shelf, and there were 48. There's a lot of graphic novels on that shelf, in case you're wondering. And then I asked you guys to pick between 1 and 48 for the book, and then if there were less on the shelf, I just went back to the beginning and counted down. So that is how I pulled the books off the shelf. These are the books that you guys picked with the numbers. Now I have a whole nother set of those numbers because I got a lot, and I think I'm gonna find a way to make that work for an on my shelf tea video because I haven't done one of those in a long time, and I have way more tea, I feel like, than even the last time I did one of those because it's excessive. So I will be doing that a little bit later in the month, so if you love the tea videos, look out for that. But let's jump into the books. So the first set of numbers is 4 and 22, and that pulled this one off the shelf. So this is Rebel of the Sands by Alwyn Hamilton, and this is the first in a YA trilogy, and it's about a girl who is from like this dead-end desert town, and she lives in a world full of kind of genies and djinn lore, and she doesn't really know a whole lot about it except what she's been told in this really small town. She just wants out of the town. She has an abusive uncle, and she's just ready to be out of the town. And she ends up hooking up with this guy who is like a bandit who's in town, and there's some drama. They ride out of town essentially, and it just follows her adventures and how her involvement with this bandit leads to something bigger. I would say honestly that this is probably the best of the 3 books. It's not that the rest of the trilogy doesn't get better, it's just that this one is a relatively small book in comparison to the other 2, and the other 2 have a lot of material that could have been left out. So this one has the best pacing of all of them, and I think that the world building continues to get better in the other 2, and it's an interesting conclusion, but overall it's probably not one of my favorite trilogies, and I would hesitantly recommend it. So if you're into YA fantasy, I think it's worth checking out. If you like genies and djinn lore, which is why I picked it up, it's worth checking out. But if neither of those things tick a box for you, then probably it's worth passing. Next up is 6 and 26. You guys picked a lot of books off of my TBR shelves. So I have 3 TBR shelves, and 4 of these books are from those shelves. The first one is Oryx and Crake by Margaret Atwood. I will be 100% honest, I don't know much about this book. I got it in a swap or something, so one of those things, I can't remember the name of it at this moment, but basically where like you got a secret Santa sort of person. It wasn't around Christmas though, and you gave them books and little goodies, and then you had somebody that was giving you those things, and this came in one of those, but I don't remember a whole lot about it. I know it's the first in a series or a duology or something like that, and I have liked Margaret Atwood in the past, so I'm interested to read it. I'd love to hear your thoughts or encouragement on this one because I genuinely don't know anything about it. Next up is 5 and 26, and that pulled this one off my shelf, which is A Spool of Blue Thread by Ann Tyler. I have had this book for so long, like embarrassingly long. It was a Christmas present, I want to say like 2 years ago, and I keep forgetting I have it, honestly. I believe this is a family saga. I know it's historical fiction, and it either won an award, or I know it was nominated, maybe for the Man Booker or the Women's Prize. I don't remember. I remember it being on some list, which is what caught my attention originally, and then I heard a lot of people talking about it at the time. I have since read a different Ann Tyler book, and I liked her writing style. Didn't love the book I read. It was Vinegar Girl, one of the Hogarth Shakespeare editions. But I'm still optimistic about liking this one, as I've heard such good things about it, and I will probably pick up the audiobook of this. I would love to hear your thoughts if you have read this one. Another TBR book, 7 and 32, that is Treason's Shore by Sherwood Smith. This is the fourth and final book in the Inda Quartet, and I should have read this by now. I started the Inda Quartet a few years ago on the recommendation of Sam from Sam's Nonsense. I almost said Novels and Nonsense. It was Novels and Nonsense when I started this series, so it's been a while. But this is the culminating novel, and I read the third one, The King's Shield, this past year and really enjoyed it. So even though there'd been quite a gap between reading the second one and reading the third one, I still really enjoyed it. So I want to get onto this one pretty quick. I will probably read this in the early months of the year because I tend to like bigger books in the winter months, but I've already sort of overcommitted myself for this year, and I want to actually finish the books that I have on my TBR right now before the end of December, so I don't want to add anything else. But this quartet is really interesting. I would say if you are a fan of The Song of Ice and Fire, or if you are a fan of the Robin Hobb Rebel of the Elderling books, then this is probably something that you would be interested in. There's a lot of political intrigue. There are some really fascinating character studies, in my opinion. Inda is a really interesting character. There are there's sort of like the land battle sort of things with the academy that they are in, and the rivalries of different houses, or I guess countries. I'm not really sure how to sort of separate it. And then there's the whole pirate line. So the second book is almost entirely pirate based, and that one was probably my favorite because that was a lot of fun and you really get to know new characters, and this has some of my favorite characters. So if you have been hesitant to pick up Inda, I would recommend it because I think that the series only gets better after the first one. And then the last of the 4 TBR books in this stack of on my shelf is 7 and 33, and that is this one, Midnight Never Come by Marie Brennan. This was a book bath box pick, so this was in one of the book bath boxes, and I think it's one of the last books I still have to read from the book bath boxes. I read the first chapter of this in the try chapter tag, and I found it intriguing. It's basically about, so there's like regular London, and then there's below London, so there's like fairy underworld London or something like that. So it has that whole fae element to it, and it sounds like it's gonna be a little dark, whimsical, a lot of fun. So this one is something I definitely want to get to next year, as I want to finish up the last of the books from subscription boxes that I received in 2017 before it gets too far into 2019, which is crazy to say. But yes, so this one came from a book bath box. So as I was just talking about this series, the next one is 8 and 32, which is Ship of Magic by Robin Hobb, which these beautiful covers, just, I can't get enough of just how beautiful these books are in the first place. And then the Ship of Magic series or trilogy is the third trilogy in the arc of the Realm of the Elderling. So you have the Assassin's Apprentice, fits in the full kind of timeline, and then you have this, which is the Ship of Magic, which follows a completely different cast of characters. There is some crossover weaved in that you don't pick up on until really near the end of the trilogy, but is probably one of my favorite like surprise reveals that I've ever had in books. But this is very piratey. You have, blanking on the characters, which I feel like is unforgivable. But you have the Vestrids. So Althea Vestrid, who is just sure she's going to inherit this ship, but she ends up, so her father dies and the ship ends up going to her brother-in-law, who is a seriously awful human. And it's all about her basically trying to take back her family's ship and all of the intrigue around live ships. And live ships are so fascinating, and just kind of the lure of the realm of the Elderlings gets deeper, and you start to really get to the points where you're wanting to know what happened and what is going on, what went on. So I think this adds a lot of dimension to the realm of the Elderling, and this is where you start to really delve into it. And from here on out, it's just like you can't put the books down, honestly. But this trilogy was one of my favorites. So the last one is going to be 11 and 17, which is The Help. And I honestly don't remember when I read this. It's been a while. It might have even been in college. But pretty much everybody knows what this is about. There was a movie. It's set in the 60s in Jackson, Mississippi, around the kind of dynamic between these black maids in these socialite white houses, and kind of the dynamics and just how bad race relations were. And it's a really interesting dynamic picture of these characters. Do I think it's the best representation? No, I think it has its problems, but I thought that it was an interesting book, and it was something that I really enjoyed at the time I read it. So if you haven't picked it up, I would definitely recommend it, and the movie was pretty good too. So that is it for the books on my shelf that you guys chose through Instagram, and I enjoyed doing this. It's been a while, and I don't know why I waited so long to do it again, but I kind of am a little embarrassed that I don't know what some of the books on my TBR are about, but that's okay. I'll get to them eventually. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day. Again, if you have read any of these, I say this every time, I would love to hear your thoughts down below. If you don't have anything else to say, you can leave an emoji just to let me know you were here, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye!